Okay, so looking at the assembly, the bracket really is kind of our stationary point that everything else attaches to, so that's kind of my first inclination. And that's one of the reasons that I wanted to have the configuration so that I could switch between the machined part and the fabricated sheet metal part. And then we'll bring in the two arms. We'll go ahead and set up probably for the pivot shaft, so then we can align the support arm and somewhere in there get the wheel support in place. Alright, so we'll fly that out of the way, create our new assembly, and since this was set up for inch and I didn't see a default assembly, I'll just go over to my other folder and grab one of the assemblies. Alright, so we said the wheel bracket comes in. I go ahead and accept it. I should have rotated it, but I didn't quite. I guess the origin looks okay there. Alright, so since this isn't in the position that I want, if I go Control 7 and pick up the isometric view, then I really need to just float this. Right, and because I didn't put this on the on center line when I created either of the parts, we're just going to attach this to the top plane. So I rotate it over, I pick the face, I pick the top plane, we'll go into the mate, and those become coincident. Maybe. So let's adjust the mate alignment. And it's not moving, so either my animation is turned off or something else is going on. There it goes. My video card is taking its own sweet time. Alright, so the issue here is I come back over from the block configuration into the sheet metal. We're going to go into an overdefined condition because I use that face. So what I really need to be considering, if I edit this feature, is get rid of the missing face, which was on that other extrude, and instead look at using planes. Alright, so this would be a good justification, and there isn't. Alright, add this and break others, and there really isn't any other mates, so I'm not sure what its problem was. But we'll go right plane to right plane and make that coincident. And then if I go to drag, we're going to look at the top plane of the part and having it go to the front plane of the assembly. Alright, so now my test is if I want to switch over to the CNC block, I'm going to be able to switch without having that error pop up. Alright, so I'm pretty certain that I'm going to have the same type of issue or have to create another configuration when we switch between the sheet metal, but let's go ahead and continue. Oh, I'm in the block. I was going to say let's go ahead and continue with the sheet metal, and we'll build up the rest of the pieces. So I'm going to switch it back to the default sheet metal piece. And my video card is still blinking at me, but that's okay. We'll insert components. Didn't think it was set to automatically browse, so that was weird. Let's go ahead and bring in the support arm. And it sort of looks like the support arm is going to be in the middle, but we're going to have to figure that out. So I want to rotate about the y-axis. And we'll keep rotating about the y-axis and get that in position. Alright, so for the whole locations, pick the face, rotate over, pick the face, and so that same logic, the reason that I had to change to the planes, but I don't really have planes here, I'm going to have to go back and reapply these mates if and when I switch over to the machined bracket. Okay, so those two, and I saw it pop up, but I didn't accept it in time. Alright, so one of the advantages of going cylindrical face and cylindrical face to the other is that if there's any mismatch, if something happens to separate or we end up changing a dimension, we really want that error as an error checking diagnostic tool. You made a change, you want it to have an issue until you correct both parts. So face to face, holding down the control button, go concentric, rotate a little bit more, and go concentric. Alright, so those are looking pretty good. At some point I'm going to want to save this. Alright, so that gives me that group. Let's go ahead and insert the components. We'll browse over to, let's go ahead and bring in the pivot shaft. So same thing, we'll rotate it about Y, bring it into position, and if I line these up concentric, alright, so that's still going to be able to move up and down and rotate. This will be checking my clearances. Even if they're off a little bit, it will warn me that I'm having that issue. And then between the two, we'll see if it'll accept concentric between. Alright, so that just verifies all of my alignments and the geometry. So if something were to change, again, we'd be able to pick up that alignment. On the manufacturing side, that means that this is really close, that we're almost to a situation of a press fit. So I have to decide how much movement I can allow in that shaft for what this is going to end up doing. So let's go ahead and bring in the wheel support. Okay, and that was the threaded side for the 1 inch. So this time we're going to rotate about X. Looks pretty good. Set my concentric. I'm not sure I want to lock rotation just yet. I think we're going to have the same, since I did 60 there and 60 there, I don't have to worry too much. We'll go ahead and set that as coincident. But the thing to keep in mind is we have a lot of contact surface area between those two faces that we're going to want to take a look at, and whatever is in here for clearance, oh, missed the washer, that would be why. And say whatever's in there for clearance, that's going to be part of our issue. So when we get to the hardware, I'm going to have to make that correction. So temporarily, I'm just going to suppress the coincidence, and even if I were to put another one in there, it's not going to be that big of a deal. All right, and then the last one will be the support. So let's go ahead and bring in the McMaster purchase part. And I'm not quite sure where I'm going to want this, so we're just going to place it. I did not create a mate reference, so that's fine. We'll go ahead and put that in position. And we know it's going to fit somewhere along there. And then we'll bring in the other one, holding down the control button, select, hold down the control button, drag in. Okay, we'll try that again. Select, hold down the control button. Not sure why that wasn't working from the feature tree, but there we go. Alright, so that puts those in position. And then we're going to have to decide the clearances, what else we want this to do. Alright, so the stationary arm comes in. Let's go ahead and rotate it about Y, put it in place. And if I drag, and that's part of the pivot. Now, we could have picked a flanged bearing, in which case it would have ridden along that side a little bit more. So holding down the control button, dragging it in, that time it let me drag it from the feature tree, or from the component tree. Go concentric. And more than likely, these are going to be, the two stationary arms are going to be somewhat parallel. Okay, so I don't know why it made them that parallel, but there we go. Alright, so the issue, I don't know what's over here. I would expect that this would be able to move, but if this is my completed subassembly, or my subassembly minus hardware, then I'm okay with letting these move and kind of figuring out what the spacing is. Since we don't have an assembly view per se, this is a good jumping off point before we get into the hardware. So one thing I do want to do is all of the little blue origins are starting to annoy me. So I will come up and turn the show origins off. So from the view, little arrow pull down, view origins, and that gives me the a good start on the assembly. So we'll save that, Control S, and then next video will be adding hardware.